the best way to describe tower cranes as a whole is you get a lot with a little. So you get high capacity, you get high capability, but you get so with a small footprint. So you're getting a lot with a little is the best way to describe it. They're going to improve safety. They're going to improve your labor cost. They're going to create a better workflow for the job site.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Ground, a construction innovation podcast. And I am your host, Dagen Davis. And we have today someone from Stephenson Equipment in Pennsylvania, a heavy equipment dealer. And we have Chad Jacobs joining us. He is the tower crane specialist. Chad, thanks for coming on the podcast with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dagen. I'm excited to be here.
All right, awesome. Well, I wanted to get started with just kind of asking you, um, you started out as a crane operator, and now you're on the dealer side working and specializing in tower crane solutions. What are the biggest things that you're seeing as a difference from when you started as a crane operator in the industry until now?
I think the biggest thing that's changing is, right now, job sites and GCs, tradesmen are having to think about things differently, with labor, safety, cost pressures, moving people to be uh, a little bit more open minded. So I'm starting to see that, a lot more focus is being put on, the front side of jobs as opposed to just kind of figuring it out as we go.
Okay. And has and this has noticeably been getting better compared to earlier in your career?
Absolutely. When I started out, um, kind of my from the beginning to where I am now, it's the business and the industry's just completely different. If you think about the way job sites are run now, even comparable to 10 years ago, it's a completely different type of a solution and a format to even, get on a project before you even start working, much less once you're on the site working. When I started in the crane industry, and the lifting industry, I started out like most did, as a rigger, a signal man, drove a truck, and then you learn different approaches and ways to doing things. But as far as safety and planning, it was kind of more seat of your pants, and how we did things. Now there's a lot more planning and execution that goes into to everything that happens on a job site, not just the crane and lifting portion of it.
Yeah, much more safety and things along those lines as well. Awesome. Since you started kind of more on the ground and then worked your way up into, the crane operating, and then from there, then on the dealer side now with solutions for cranes on the job site, could you just walk us through your career journey?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in construction pretty much my whole life. When I got out of school, I did various, jobs, from paving to concrete work to, framing to a little bit of everything. I spent a long time in the concrete industry, was running crews, was running concrete paving machines, curb machines, and my cousin was in cranes and lifting, and I was ready for a change. He said, "Why don't you come over, get your CDL, get your license, and you can come to work for us." And that's exactly what I did. I went towards the lifting industry, and I never turned back. I went in and was a driver. I was a rigger. I did a little bit of everything there, and then kind of moved into the seat of a crane, a small crane, and kind of worked my way on up through into being a project manager, and at the end a division manager in a large rental house. So kind of every step along the way kind of moved up through, if you want to call it that.
Okay, great. So nice, natural progression there. So speaking on your operating and your, different roles that you had on the job site on for lifting in particular, um, how has that really helped you? I mean, I could imagine being on the solutions and sales side, that really helps your outlook and being able to talk to the customers.
Yeah, I think from when you spend time in the seat, and not only in the seat, but just on the job site, as a rigger or working with crane operators, you get to kind of see the entire job. You see the whole job flow. So you're not looking at things. I think I come at it where I'm not looking at things from a sales point. I look at the execution side of things, because if something doesn't work in the field, it's a goal to create a plan that is going to work and that's going to work in real life, not just with words and a sales pitch, because and when you get to see everything that's happened and how things have improved, you get to see different trades, how they do each and every lift, every portion of it, and you see how they all connect together. It kind of gives you more of a solution and execution side of things as opposed to just maybe equipment sales side of things, especially in the lines of cranes that I work with.
What's the most enjoyable part for you through this whole process?
I think probably my favorite thing is I actually get to kind of be a teammate with the customer. So I work with them kind of from start to finish, from the conception of a job right down to the completion of the job for my end of things. So getting to start from, especially a new customer where, it just started with just literally a phone call. And then it progressed to where, I'm kind of just a key part of the sequence of how they do work is probably the most rewarding for me. And then to get them, see them to execute and try new equipment, new solutions is just a bonus.
Okay. And then how has crane work and lifting actually improved over the last several years?
I think probably, I use that word planning a lot, but that's really, I think been the biggest improvement. It's moved from figuring things out on site to having kind of planned operations. It used to be kind of how, efficiency was kind of thought to be connected with cutting corners, but now efficiency comes from preparation, so you're able to get the same efficiency and greater, but you're able to do it in a safe manner. So I think that's probably the best way that lifting, you know, uh, the industry has moved forward is in that thinking ahead, more pre-planning job sites, pre-planning individual lifts.
What specifically are they doing better to plan the lifts these days?
Well, I think contractors are doing the right thing because they are pre-planning, and in doing so, they're bringing in the right people to do it. It leads with if you bring the right people in. I like to think I'm one of those right people where you rely on others that have a specialty in that trade. That's going to lead to better coordination. It's going to lead to better planning. I always use it as a catchphrase, but it's really not a catchphrase. You plan to work, you work to plan. And that's what's rewarding as you said about in your previous question. It's rewarding because, I'm able to go from the print to the plan to the project with our customers. And when contractors allow you to do that, which they are doing more and more, they're integrating that in. That's the biggest way that they can improve their job site and the efficiency of the job site. I help teams execute and get from point A to point B.
Okay. On the planning side, I know there can be technology involved. Are you seeing artificial intelligence more and more in these technologies?
It's absolutely I'm embracing it more and more as a time savings for myself. Before we jumped on this podcast with you. I'm trying to teach myself, and it just is a time savings manner for me of being able to do a workflow and input in and get some of the work kind of cut out where I can limit some of the more tedious parts of it and kind of get to the crust of what I need to do as far as with prints and with planning. So absolutely, technology's changed so much from I'm not that old, but I can remember laying things off on paper, and having a rolling scale to figure out the scale and measurements for prints and things like that. So it hasn't been that long ago that we went from paper to digital, and now with AI, it's limited, it's limitless now. It's just a matter of us embracing it and using it and learning how to use it correctly.
Yeah, figuring it out. I know, I've done some planning, and even some mapping out of things, for construction sites on AI, and it wasn't there yet, but I think it just needs to be taught how we want it to be. So it's more about the training side of it.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm kind of trying to go in and work through workflows of what I wanna be able to see, what I don't wanna see, some rules to follow by when I input in certain prints or input in certain, problems looking for solutions. It's all what you put into it, I think, is what you're gonna get out of it, and what you get out of it is already the time savings for myself is just unbelievable.
Yeah. You get a little extra time at night, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So with AI being something that should be embraced, for these time-saving tasks, are there any other ways right now that, you could maybe use to make the planning more efficient and better for the customer?
Yeah, I mean, for right now, I make it, really as simple as possible for the customer. I ask for the customer, the general format we use is they'll send me a set of architectural drawings, and I'll take a first look at it. I'll kind of come up with some questions that I may have about the job site, what their aspect of the job site's going to be, and then from there we build. I build from my planning software from there and put together a solution, a lift solution for them. It might be multiple lift solutions because they may be looking for, a couple of different options. I'll put that together. Once they formulate and say, yeah, this is what we want to go with, I'll put uh, the pricing side of it together, make sure it's budgetable for them. And then from there, if that's acceptable to them, then we go right to a full job plan that really details every aspect of what I'm going to do with my machines. Delivery, setup, what the capabilities are going to be able to do, and it's makes it so simple for because I work with trades. Usually more so than anything, I'm working not with crane people. I'm working with trades, various trades, and I kind of fill that spot as more of the crane lifting solution side of it. So I create a full job plan that they can turn over if they're not a GC, that they can turn over to their GC that can fall right in line with the safety standards that they're looking for, and it's pretty much every aspect of the job's detailed out.
Okay. Great. So I know you mentioned, you're working with a lot of the trades, and one thing I've noticed is, in the crane world, if you're outside of the crane world, you're a little intimidated by cranes, right? So, what would be some of the advantages if we have some listeners today, that are interested or would like to learn a little bit more about it? What would be the advantages that a tower crane would bring to a modern job site?
I think the best way to describe tower cranes as a whole is you get a lot with a little. So you get high capacity, you get high capability, but you get so with a small footprint. So you're getting a lot with a little is the best way to describe it. They're going to improve safety. They're going to improve your labor cost. They're going to create a better workflow for the job site. And then when you integrate in, the self-erect side of things, or kind of more my specialty thing, then it kind of gets notched up to, another level. But tower cranes in general, I think that's the best way to describe them. You get a lot with a little disturbance to your job site with a lot of capability.
Okay. Great. And then what's one of the main safety points that you could make on, someone just not understanding, cranes are intimidating. You think that they could just fall over and crush the building and everyone with it. So, what would be a big safety point that you could just point out and say, "Hey, this really just isn't the fact"?
Well, from multiple sides of it, a tower crane and what I do is again, how many times have we used that word plan? Every aspect of what I do is planned out and it's put on print and it's put on and shared for everyone on the job site. But just overall, tower cranes themselves, there's multiple aspects of how they, from a safety standpoint, like my machines replace multiple machines on a job site. So if you put one of my cranes on a job site, you may cut out 2 to 3 other machines that are moving around on that job site. So that cuts out 2 to 3 opportunities for a piece of equipment to run into something or somebody. If you take this time of year, spring, ground's still wet, let's just say you have a couple of telehandlers running around on site. They're leaving, deep ruts. They're messing up the site. Now somebody walks out, they roll their ankle. It's an OSHA recordable. It's just less opportunities for things to go wrong. And then as far as from a material standpoint and labor standpoint, less heavy lifting. These cranes, are going to do the work for you. They're going to show up every day and they're going to do the job for you. And then from another side would be the um from the efficiency side of things would be you're covering a lot more area than what you normally would. So from a safety standpoint, I'm covering that area, but with remote controls, the operator never has to not see what he's doing. He's never in the blind. He never has to wonder, am I okay here? He never has to wonder was that piece rigged up correctly? He can see every aspect of what he's doing.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think the biggest thing just being on job sites myself, just walking around, you're always worried and you have to be aware of the other machines running around you. So you have to worry about that. The construction company has to worry about the trades, the entire site. And so what I'm gathering from the planning that you do with cranes, you're just well informed, well planned. Everyone kind of knows where it's at, where it's going to be, where things are going to be swinging and lifting. And then on top of that, if you go back to like a telehandler, I've been on sites where guys just jump at the telehandler and start running it, and that can't be very planned. Most of that is just run and gun. And so I can see how that can be a big advantage of having a crane over some of these other machines.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That it's getting more and more where the days and the safety standards are, having, laborers come to the edge of a roof or the edge of a floor 30 to 40 times a day because that's where the telehandler can get the load to is coming to an end. It's just not, it's not accepted anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And I could see that on a safety standpoint, just even if even if you're the best, you have the best balance in the world, wind can come by and just knock you down. So that can really hurt. But Chad, we're going to go ahead and take a commercial break for a high level talent commercial real quick, and then we will be right back.
Sounds good.
Every job site comes with pressure. Deadlines stacking, crews moving, jobs depending on you. But behind the scenes, everything slows down. Quotes and bids, calls, service tickets, even admin work stacks up. With high-level talent, you can hire remote staff to fill the traditional office positions at half the cost, so your team can focus on what actually makes money. Scale your operation without scaling your overhead. High-level talent. Visit highleveltalent.com today to learn more.
All right, and we're back with Chad Jacobs from Stephenson Equipment. He is the tower crane specialist. And so we wanted to ask him a few more questions involving the crane industry. And so, as far as it comes to cranes on the job site, where have you seen mechanically that they've gotten better?
Well, I think for my machines, traditionally, what I use and probably I'd say for tower cranes as a whole, it's very limited moving parts on a tower crane. Realistically, there's 3 electric motors running these machines. So, from a mechanical standpoint, there's not a lot of moving parts. There's not a lot of things that go wrong with these machines. You got electric uh, motors running the hoist, running a trolley hoist, and then running the slew, or what makes the crane actually swing around. So very limited movement there. And then mechanically, um, now with new software, you can diagnose things, without being on the job site. So that's a big advantage with Poton in particular. With their CCS systems, we're able to see faults and codes, mobily, and address it, or address something that could be an upcoming issue before it becomes a issue.
Okay. So you're seeing a big improvement on the service side, and being able to service these machines faster.
Absolutely. Yep,
So
absolutely.
a lot of the time, on cranes, I know sometimes it's a little harder with some other equipment because you're dealing with these big diesel engines and things that salesmen may not have the background in. But with cranes, it seems like there's less moving parts that may need to be diagnosed. And so, are you finding that it's a lot easier for you to just jump on a call with a customer and just figure it out, as opposed to having to get the service department always involved?
Absolutely. And that's what, most of the times the customer is going to call me first. So they call me first because a lot of times we can work through an issue and then come up with a solution. So it definitely is, it streamlines that for me. And because they are more simplistic, I'm not a technician by any means. Um, but I can usually at least get the troubleshooting done, a lot of the troubleshooting done before a technician needs to go to a job site, or at least saves a partial trip going to the job site, which again, it's going to save the customer and save Stephenson equipment money.
Yep, exactly. And so on, let's move on from the planning that we talked about earlier, and just actually on the job site. From your perspective, what do the best job sites have in common?
The best job sites I think have in common is everybody's on the same page, communication. You know, when when I show up on a job site, it shouldn't be a surprise that we're there with the crane. So the best job sites for me is when my technicians come in, everybody knows what's coming. They know where the crane's going. They know how we're accessing the site. And that's all done in a plan that I put together. But that plan means nothing if it's not kind of shared with everybody on site. So coordination, is just a necessity. And that's where the right job sites and the best job sites are just ahead of the game. Everybody knows, everybody's on board, and it just kind of rolls seamlessly.
And just to make this more practical for listeners that may be on job sites all day long, what are you seeing what they're actually doing to effectively communicate?
Well, a lot of times it'll be toolbox talks. It'll be their morning meeting. Most sites have a morning meeting, a safety meeting, or they have a weekly meeting with all the subs. And probably that's the most important, is because, it's not just the GC or our customer we're dealing with, affects all the subs on the site. So if we're coming in, with 4 tractor trailers, it's going to affect how everything runs on the job site. So knowing that early on, them being able to plan on it, and again, us putting something together that everyone knows where we're coming at, how we're coming to the site, what's going to be needed, what we're going to access. It just kind of, we're going to, no matter what, we're going to impact the job site. We want to have the least amount of impact. And a good way to do that is for communication with everybody that's on there, on that site together.
Awesome. Yeah. Communication is key in really every aspect of life, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So as far as cranes, tower cranes specifically, since that's what you do on a daily basis. What's the most exciting innovation in that work right now that you've seen?
I'd say for me, if I had to sum it up, the most exciting thing for the tower crane segment that I do would be our Montalift product, which is takes the advantage of a tower crane and then adds mobility to it. So you get the capacity and the reach and the small footprint of our self-erect tower crane, and then you add mobility. We're able to, bring that on a crane in on a truck, unload it within 15 minutes, be set up and be ready to work. And the same way for if we're going to move on site, there's always that maybe that one part of the site you're just not able to get to, you're not able to reach. 15 minutes, we can tear that crane down, drive it around to the other side and be set back up. It offers something that really no other manufacturer offers right now.
This is essentially a crane that isn't static. You don't even have to pay to move it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big portion of cranes in general most time is the mobilization. Mobilization's your cost. With this, what we're able to do, for competent and qualified contractors is we go out, we do an orientation with the customer, we train them on the machine, and they can avoid all that cost. Again, I help plan everything out, including the orientation to the machine, and we make them competent to where they feel confident to be able to do it. We provide setup guides, setup videos. They able to really we want them to progress, because the more they use the machine, the more they rent the machine, the more opportunity it is for us and it is for Montalift. We want it to be ingrained that they don't want to do without it. So the easier we can make that on them, the more that they use it, the more they see the practicality of the machine, the better for us.
Okay, and these Montalift you said, are they new cranes, or how does that work?
They're new, just about, like self-erect tower cranes in general are not new, but we're probably one of the last areas, the last countries to fully embrace it. There's pockets of them around the US that have really embraced self-erect tower cranes in the segment that they do, but it's not nearly as strong as what you would find in other countries. Then when you take the Montalift and add the mobility side of it, you're probably looking at, uh, a little bit more than 5 to 6 years they've been in the States, but still very limited in people's exposure to them. I'm always surprised with those that never heard of the product still, as much marketing and things as we try to do. It's amazing to me those that don't know about the product. I just put one up the other week with another large crane rental house, and dealer, and they were just amazed with it, and it's their first experience with it. So it just shows it's exciting because it means there's room for growth.
Okay, and if someone wants to learn more that's listening, how do they learn more about that particular product?
The easiest way to learn about that product and to get a hold of me in general would be our dedicated website for that product, which is mobiletowercrane.com is the best way to get a hold of us and learn about that product in particular.
Okay, great. So what I will do is add that down to our description when we do post this on YouTube. So that way, if anyone's interested, you can go right down to the description and click the link and check it out. So Chad, we're kind of wrapping up here. We're coming up on our time. Is there anything that you would like to add? Anything that you would like to promote on your end?
I would just the biggest thing I could say would be, if you're on the East Coast and you're looking for a lift solution, and you've kind of leery about tower cranes, leery about self-erect machines, maybe you don't know anything about them. Look me up. I always say, it never hurts. It never hurts to talk. Let's talk about it. Send me prints, send me plans. We'll lay off your project and we'll come up with a lift solution that's going to work for you. And if my machines don't work for you, I'll let you know. What I mean? I'm not opposed to other machines. Stephenson Equipment is an equipment dealer for all machines. We tower cranes is just a small segment of it. We have cranes, we have telehandlers, we have, forklifts, we have a little bit of everything. So There's not one right solution for everything, but I do think that my line of equipment is a nice niche piece of equipment for what I do. Tight sites, miserable sites, you're having trouble figuring out how to do it, look me up. And then for our Montalift product, look at mobiletowercrane.com and then reach out. It's the best way is just to see it in action.
Awesome. And what better person to learn all of that from, by giving you, Chad, a call, because you were an operator once. You were on the ground
Absolutely.
once. You signaled, you rigged, all of that good stuff. So this is going to be your best guy for that information if you are on that northeast side of the country.
Yep, absolutely. And like I said, Montalift, we're looking for dealers across the country too. We have multiple dealers set up already from, the East Coast to Hawaii, but we have a lot of room open for dealers. Anybody interested in learning more, that has an interest, we're seeking you out.
Awesome. So we'll put all this in the description just to make sure everyone can follow along and follow up, more importantly. But thanks for joining us, Chad. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on here. No, we've known each other for a while now, and I appreciate you helping me out.
I appreciate it, Dagen.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks. Yep, thank you.
That's another episode of Breaking Ground. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Every job site comes with pressure. Deadline stacking, crews moving, jobs depending on you. But behind the scenes, everything slows down. Quotes and bids, calls, service tickets, even admin work stacks up. With high-level talent, you can hire remote staff to fill the traditional office positions at half the cost, so your team can focus on what actually makes money. Scale your operation without scaling your overhead. High-level talent. Visit highleveltalent.com today to learn more.